Hi everyone, thank you all for joining today's webinar. My name is Kristen Brown. I'm the Marketing Events Manager at Ironside. I'm just going to take a couple moments to walk you through today's webinar on TM1 workforce planning. Today's presenter is going to be Jerry Haig, who is our TM1 technical lead at Ironside. Also on today's presentation is a colleague of mine, Stephen Kratek, who is an account executive, and Rob Minogue, who is Performance Manager, Practice Director for Ironside. You can join today's discussion on Twitter. You can tweet us at Ironside Group using hashtag IBMTM1. Also, I've included Jerry Haig's email address and LinkedIn profile. You can reach out with him directly after the webinar. Any questions you have throughout the webinar, there is a questions panel. Just enter in all of your questions and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Just wanted to quickly go over upcoming events. So for those of you who are attending IBM Insight, Ironside is a gold sponsor this year, and we are at booth 620. So make sure you stop in, say hi, and we can tell you all about some of our events that we have going on while at Insight. You can also reach out to me after the webinar, kbrown@ironsidegroup.com, and I'll make sure you receive invites to all of our exclusive events at Insight. And now I'm going to hand it over to Stephen Kratek, who's going to give you a brief overview of Ironside.
Hi, thanks, Kristen. My name is Stephen Kratek, and I'm a member of the sales team here at Ironside. Some of you may have heard from me and my colleagues ahead of this webinar as we tried to get a sense of your needs and your hopes going into this session, and so we hope we can make this hour or so as valuable for you as possible. That said, please ask questions and contact me directly afterwards if you'd like to discuss your organization's needs in detail. So before I begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about who we are. Ironside is a premier IBM partner. We're IBM's current Business Analytics Partner of the Year for North America. Our expertise spans the entire information delivery lifecycle, from analytics advisory, including strategic roadmaps, reference architecture, and the like, business intelligence, so think dashboards, reporting, mobile, data visualizations, information management, including data integration, warehousing, big data. And we have a thriving performance management practice, which will be on stage today. So we have deep expertise in finance, sales and operations planning, forecasting and modeling. Some of the brightest minds in advanced analytics, so think data mining, segmentation, predictive modeling. We have education in the IBM business analytics stack, including training in TM1, Cognos BI, and SPSS. And we offer managed services and remote development services. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rob Minogue, who's our Performance Management Director, and we'll get into today's webinar. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. So I think we're going to take a little bit of a dive into that performance management portion of our offerings. So if you think of budgeting and planning, and probably a lot of you are going through that cycle right now, you know, a very important component of that, especially if you're a services company, is workforce planning. So this is how we see IBM's offerings within, you know, the workforce planning arena. So if you go across the yellow boxes, you have SPM, or Sales Performance Management, on the left, and that is within that ICM and Veracent and those types of technologies. And those really focus on incentive comp and variable comp, and, you know, as far as compensation plans that your sales force may be on, and so on, and the ability to, you know, effectively actually administer those plans as well. I think usually how we think of it there is Veracent actually helps get rid of shadow accounting, which a lot of salespeople, if you're involved in that from a finance perspective, you'll be familiar with that term. So that's one side of workforce planning, is, you know, handling all the variable and incentive comp that you need, all of that modeling you need to do around that. On the other side, on SPSS, you know, so there's some interesting use cases that Ironside has worked on there that you can see here. So namely employee churn, employee surveys, and employee tenure. So if you think about when you're doing usually the first step in workforce planning is coming up with that headcount, what I would call roll forward. So doing your forecast by month for headcount and assumptions around employee attrition and tenure and so on, getting a little bit more sophisticated there, to, and bringing in some of SPSS's predictive capabilities to help with some of that modeling is basically how we see SPSS integrating. And then, centrally TM1. So the way we think about TM1 for workforce planning really is that core headcount-based budgeting and planning model that most organizations have to go through. So starting with FTE and headcount base and that roll forward I described, building out everything that goes along with that. So base salaries, bonus, taxes, everything you can see listed here, fringes, merits, and so on. Multiple versions as you go through iterations of your budget plan, weaving all that in. So today's webinar really is going to concentrate on that centerpiece. And then up top we have Cognos Business Intelligence. So as far as having the core modeling take place in these yellow boxes, what business intelligence and all of the offerings there can bring to bear is a lot of the reporting, analytics, dashboarding capabilities on top of these core modeling engines. And then also Concert. So I'm going to hand it off to Jerry, but at the end, we also, what you're going to see today, we have also brought into IBM Concert. We're very excited about the potential there, and if you are going to IBM Insight, you can, like Kristen said, come see us at the booth, and we can give you a little bit more information on how this works within Concert. So with that, I will pass it off to Jerry Haig. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Rob. So as Kristen mentioned, I'm Jerry Haig. I'm the TM1 technical lead at Ironside. I've been working with TM1 since the late 90s. Prior to being a TM1 consultant, I worked in an FP&A group using TM1. So I've been on both sides for a long time. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information was at the beginning. You can email me anytime if you have questions about how to do it, what can be done. I've been working with it a long time, so I'm more than happy to help. What are we going to cover today? We're going to talk about workforce/compensation planning in TM1 at a high level. Why is it hard? Frankly, I've built a lot of planning solutions in my many years doing this. This is one that people struggle with the most. That's why we're doing this webinar. It's the one people have the most challenges with, and we're going to talk about why that is and sort of how to work around those challenges. Some of the benefits. Why would I do this in TM1? What does it get me? We'll talk about that. The options for doing employee to department assignment. This is actually one of the biggest challenges of how to control who belongs to what department across time. From different planning versions to within a planning cycle. So people can move. How do I handle that? How do I handle positions becoming open, new positions being added? How to manage that all. I'll just show you a high-level process flow of what it looks like, sort of where the data comes from, where it goes. We're going to talk about security. Security is always a concern of people's, right? When you get into compensation, people get nervous. I want to make sure that people can't see things they shouldn't. And sometimes one of the challenges people have there that comes up a lot is, I don't necessarily want the system administrator to see everyone's salaries and how to work around that. And there's some options there, so we can talk about that. We're going to demo the Ironside compensation solutions. This is something that we've built that's sort of evolved over a number of years of honing our best practices of ways to solve this. We're going to show you a live demo of that. And then as part of that, I'll show you some screenshots of what it looks like in Concert, which will be available at our booth at Insight. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. Any questions you have, we'll address them then. Okay, so why is it hard? Assuming you have some familiarity with TM1, in TM1 there essentially are no predefined structures. So when I open up TM1, it's a blank slate, for better or worse. The good news with that is I can build it to be exactly what I want it to be. The bad news is, and I've never done it before, I don't even know where to begin. how do I structure my dimensions? How do I build my cubes? How do I do these things? I don't know. So as part of that, we have some predefined structures that we've developed that will work in most cases, and we'll talk about that. I'll show that to you. The employee department mapping, I touched on that briefly before, how to handle that. That's the challenge. How to address employee movement. So these are transfers, terminations. What if I restructure my departments? I move people around. I close the department, move all those people to another department. How to handle that? Regional requirements. So in some cases, I'm doing compensation planning for the entire world. Well, my requirements in the United States could be very different from Europe. Or even countries within Europe. They could be very different. Some advice there is try to make it as universal as possible. Do not, if you're building a global system, do not build in every possible metric that every country has. What you end up with is a mess of various measures that'll be too complicated. You'll have people entering stuff which doesn't apply to them. You end up with a giant worksheet with 100 columns of various possible values. It really gets too complicated for people. I built them, so some people want that, but my recommendation is get down to what is most universal and will work most for everyone. And don't be afraid to put in plugs in there, a non-employee specific entry, or other benefits, or those types of entries that can capture some of these one-offs that maybe only apply to a very small subset of your business. Security. So security is a concern for people. You know, how to manage that to make sure that people don't see what they shouldn't see. And especially where this is challenging is in the employee movement. So if I'm going to transfer someone, how do I control the movement from one department to another? And who can see it when they're in that transfer zone? So do I let people just move stuff automatically? Does an admin do it? How to do that? And we have a mechanism to sort of to handle all that. Updates to base data during the planning process. So typically, if you're doing a plan, your planning cycle may not be done in a week. Well, I may start my planning cycle with my base employee data. So I start with, based on, here's my payroll file as of a certain date. Well, by the time my plan is done or near complete, I'm doing various revisions, that may have changed substantially. I may have been going through many payroll cycles. Now, the data I've started my plan with the employee mappings to departments, maybe some of those people left. Now I'm planning for people who aren't even in their job anymore. So how do I update it during the cycle to get in the newest data from payroll, but not overwrite anyone's adjustments, the changes people have made? So I want to make sure I'm using the most current base data, but I don't want to overwrite everything that all the users have entered. And then finally, approved versus requested open positions. So depending on the sophistication of my payroll system, I may have coming out of there, or my HR, certain approved open positions. But within a planning cycle, I'm going to also request new positions be created. Now, some of those won't actually be approved. I may request that I want 10 positions in my department, but executive management's going to say, no, you can only have 5. But maybe I want to keep a log of my requests so that then a year later when I actually needed 10, I go back to them and say, hey, I asked for 10, you gave me 5. So and how to handle that. So we're going to show you sort of the ways we address all of those things. Some of the benefits. Detailed benefit calculations. So using TM1, it's very easy to do fringe calculations based on a set rate and a certain cap. So it's really easy to calculate, here's the SUDA-FUDA caps, here's the rate, and then cut those off and have them update as I change people's salaries or bonuses come in or merit or all those things. That can all happen in real time so I can see those benefits being exactly what they should be across the total organization. Scenario modeling. The nice thing is TM1 lets you create different scenarios. They can be different versions. I'm going to use some terms that if you're not super familiar with TM1, you may not know. If you are, you may understand what I'm talking about. It's not critical if you don't know what the terms actually mean. But TM1 lets you create you can create your own individual scenarios with what they call sandboxes, where I could play with these different rates. I can play with different merits, different bonuses, sort of see that impact, see it flow through to the P&L, so I can actually see the impact on profit. Or I could even have different versions where it's a total company and people are doing it differently. So there's a lot of options there to do various scenario modeling. Employee transfers. So using the model we've developed, it's actually very easy to transfer employees, to move an employee from one department to another within a planning cycle and at a given time. So you say, I want to move Joe Smith from Department 1 to Department 2 in June. And it will take all his data. It'll take his data from his base department up to June, leaves that, and then moves any of the forecasted data from June out to the new department. To do reporting, so using this system, I can do reporting at an employee or position level. So I can see an individual person across time, where they were, what their expenses were, the costs were associated with them, or I could look at it for a given job. So for this position, who was in it, when, and what were the expenses associated with the job itself. So I can look at it either way. Robust security. So I can do the security where I can lock down, essentially TM1 supports security at any level you want. But using this model, we can show you, we can lock down salaries so that only people who need to see them can see them. So I can even show it where I can look at the income statement level, see the total salaries, but not see the individual people that make it up. Or I can see the people, but I can't change it. Or I can change it, but I can't change base assumptions, such as a default merit increase, bonus rate tables. Or maybe I can change all of those things, see everything. It's kind of however you need it to be. We talked about the updates. So using the system, you can make updates to payroll during your plan, update that base data, update the employee mappings of who's where, and then also a mechanism to handle approved versus requested open positions. Okay, so employee to department. Essentially, and there's a couple more options, but basically this is what I see most often in the field. There's two ways to handle this. The simplest way is simply have employee roll up within a department dimension. So my department is 1, 2, 3, and I have my employees rolling up to that department. It's real simple. My department level security will work. I secure it by department, and then I see the children. That's easy. It's simple. It works fine if your employees don't change. So if you have 30 employees and aren't expecting any movements within a plan, that will work fine. Where it won't work fine is if you have a lot of employees with a lot of movement. So people are moving within the organization, they're moving to other departments, I'm doing reorgs, that type of thing. I'm going to have changes within a plan. You're going to run into a lot of issues there. So what we normally recommend is using a mapping cube. So this is essentially a cube that stores the mapping of where an employee resides by time. So I'm going to say by, in this example it's by month, but really it could be by any mechanism of time that you want. It could be by day if you needed it at that level. Most people don't, but if you did, it would support it. Who's in department 1, 2, 3. It'll show all of the people. And what's nice about that is then I have a history of the movements of who was in department when, okay? And then also, the other thing about that is actually lets me share FTEs where I can actually have an employee be in multiple departments at the same time. So if someone was doing half their job in this department, half in this, I could list them in both and have the appropriate weightings of where they belong, or even quarter FTE, however you want. Okay, so how does it work? This flowchart's a little busy, but I think it makes sense. So essentially, you start with your payroll system. So it could be ADP, whatever it is. And in most cases, we get a feed from that every payroll cycle there is. So if that's weekly, if it's monthly, if it's a couple times a week, whatever it is, we'll typically, we don't have to, we'll typically take as many feeds as there are and load those into an employee actual cube. So this is actual data. You could just, if you certainly want to do planning, you could load just the base plan data into here and just take one feed from payroll if you chose to do so. That cube will then feed an existing employees cube and an employee mapping cube. So the existing employees cube is where I'd actually make my entries. So essentially, I get my base data from my actual cube. It feeds over to existing employees, and existing employees is where I make my updates. So I'm going to terminate this person. I'm going to promote them. They're going to go on leave. I'm going to change their merit. Whatever it is, I make all those changes in that cube. The mapping cube helps me populate my template in the sense that it shows me who belongs to where. And I'll show that to you in a few minutes. I think it'll probably make more sense. And then we have an employee transfers cube that will allow me to manage who moves where. So it allows me to manage movements within a planning cycle. And then you can see I have input templates here at the bottom that feed those cubes. Then we also have off to the side is new employees input. Now these would be new positions not approved in your payroll system. So if you had existing open positions that are already approved, already in your system, those would not be in this. These would be net new that are as part of this plan. Then all of that summarizes up to employee reporting. So employee reporting is where I look at it. I see my expenses by month for given employees. So these other cubes, I'm not inputting time. I input some action dates, but they don't have a time dimension to them. And then that cube also has feeding into it a bonus rates cube where I can say, I can define bonus rates by employee grade, which is an attribute of the employee. Say employees of grade 20 get a 10% bonus. Employees of grade 30 get a 20% bonus, or even fixed dollar amounts in there. So, you know, executive level, they're getting a $100,000 bonus. Okay, and I don't show it on this, but then the results of employee reporting could then feed up to your income statement. So this model is essentially just a component of what we offer as part of an overall planning FBM solution. So all of this, so this is one component to feed up to your income statement. You know, there's also could be a gross to net component, an operating expenses component, and all those could be different components that summarize up to a full income statement. Okay, so security. Let's talk about that for a moment. Well, first off, using compensation, you use your same existing security model. And what I mean by that is if you have, so typically this is at a department or cost center level, you probably already have security for that dimension. If you, assuming you were adding this on to an existing model. If not, you could build it. But this would use that same security. So the same for a planning version. So you have a mechanism to control when your plan is opened or closed. All that security would still apply to this application automatically. Like I said earlier, users can have access to all employees, but not the data associated with them. Meaning, and what I mean by that is it's the summary of their expenses. So I could see the total employee value, but not the underlying detail that makes it up. So not the you know, individual employee numbers. Employee attributes. So you know, you may have various metrics associated with the individual employees. Maybe you have their birth date, their address in the system. You may not want all that stuff exposed to every user. You can have individual security on those individual metrics so that people can see it or not. And then fringe rates and caps, all that stuff. So there's some high-level, sort of global assumption level that the users can read but not update. And that can be changed, but that's typically how it's done. There's a separate cube. In this case, we actually did 2 cubes, but where you're managing that, and typically the admin or who's ever responsible for planning maintains that. One of the challenges a couple users have had is they have a system admin, but they don't want the admin to see all the salary data. So by default, if someone's in the official TM1 admin group, then they can see everything, and there's nothing you can do about that. However, what you can do is you can create a user group that has admin permissions to various functions, but not part of the base admin group. So I can give someone the ability to load data, to update a dimension, make those types of changes, and that includes updating security, but not giving them full admin permission. So I can, lock off that part of compensation so they can't see that. That can be done. Okay, so let's get to the meat of actually looking at the demo. I'm going to start off showing it to you in TM1 perspectives. For those of you familiar with TM1, there's numerous TM1 interfaces. This could be used in any of them. I'm going to show it to you in TM1 perspectives, and I'm also going to show you TM1 web. It's the same application. I'm accessing the same server. I'm just going to show you the two interfaces to give you an idea of two users looking at the same data simultaneously. Just to put context around this demo, this is going to be fairly technical. This isn't going to be a salesy, fancy-looking demo. I want you to see what it looks like on the back end. So I'm going to show you how it works. I'm going to show you how it's built so you get an idea of really how this is done. I'm not going to show you a bunch of screens and sort of hide everything and say, here you enter some data and then magic happens and it just does it. I want you to get an understanding of how this actually works. So first we're going to start off. I'm also going to assume, for time purposes, that you have some understanding of how TM1 as a product works. If you don't, feel free to reach out to us and we can do a more detailed demo where we maybe go a little bit slower and go over some of the functionality of TM1. I'm going to sort of gloss over that stuff rather quickly in the interest of time. So here I'm going to log in natively to the server. Obviously, if you were doing this in a production environment, it would probably be an integrated login where it would automatically log me into the server. Okay? So I want to show you here, I have a bunch of cubes here. These are all not part of this solution. Like I said, this is part of an overall planning solution. So some of these cubes we're not using for this purpose. But you can see here, there's my actual data I talked about. There's the existing employees. There's a summary cube. There's the mapping cube. So I want to show you this mapping cube here. You can see here my dimensions. It's version, department, employee index, location, and a mapping measure. The index is how I am determining who belongs where. So essentially, in this case, it's just a counter of 1 through as many as employees you have within a given location. If you look at existing employees, here I have the actual employee as a dimension. I also have employee position. So we set this up so that you can actually do it by employee and position. If you don't have a positional tracking system where you're actually tracking position numbers, we can just use the employee number. It just will support a separate position numbering system if you so have it, but you don't have to. The system will still work fine without it. So let's take a look at the existing employees cube, or the input template. Okay. So here are all my selections at the top. I'm selecting a version, a currency, in this case all local, a department, and a location. Here, these queries here are pulling from the employee mapping cube. It's all hidden to the side. But these numbers are coming from the employee mapping cube, so it knows how to build this list of who belongs where. Okay, so when I select this, I go here and I select a different department. I'm going to get different employees. Okay, so that's how you get around knowing which employees to list based on an individual selection. Because what I don't want to have is every single employee, coming down the side here if I have a large organization. So, this is like here I have position number and employee number. In this case, I just made them the same. An employee name, a grade, a hire date. It doesn't do anything. So hire date, and I can add any kind of informational attributes you'd like here. So if you want to have, where the person's physically located, their address, any of those things, you can add as many of those metrics as you can, an anniversary date, any of that stuff if that's important to you. They don't necessarily have to do anything. They can be displayed here if it helps the users enter their data. The grade here we talked about earlier drives bonus, and then transfer in and transfer out period isn't used right now because I haven't transferred one, but we will. Base salary, FTE, default merit, merit adjustment, an employee action, I'll come back to that, an action start date, the merit, the bonus, bonus adjustment, and status. In this case, I can update the green, the light green columns. So these gray cells are not changeable. So the base salary is the base salary coming out of the payroll system. I can then adjust it using this merit adjustment field and say I want to, so the default merit increase is 3%, but I'm going to give this person, I'm going to add 3% to them. So in this case, I'm saying what I'm going to update it to. So you can see here, I put 0.3 in, so I'm adding 3% to it. So now it's a total of 6%. You can see the merit increase, the total merit increase is 6%. Okay? Now, I want to show you what this looks like to another user. So I'm going to log into the web here. I'm going to log in as a separate user. So it takes me to a menu screen. This is TM1 Web. So this is the employee summary. So this is the values that we're looking at right now, summarized up by month. So you can see here, this is all the salaries, the adjusted amount. There's merit, there's base, plus bonus. I have set at the global level where bonus and merit hit. Right now, the way this is configured, it's only changeable at the global level. I could set that up so that it's changeable by individual users, so I can change a given person's merit increase date or bonus date. And then here I have the payroll taxes. So you can see here, FUTA and SUTA are hitting the maximum in January, so they come off. And then you can see the FICA amounts. You can see they change. You can see they go up a good bit in June when the bonus hits. And then there's the Medicare values. And the same, it goes up when bonus hits. Let's go back to Excel. So I'll show you here. So in here, merit is 1,500. So if I change this person's bonus, this person's merit increase to be, I'm going to add 20% to that. So you can see they got a substantial merit increase. If I go back to the web, you can see that merit increase amount changed, and it changed in June. Okay, so they're seeing that in real time. Now I also have the ability to go over here, so back to my menu, and here it is. Oh, by the way, these are just standard active forms. These reports are real simple. These are just active forms out of TM1. So these are active form slices from my income statement cube and my employee summary cube. So here you can see, these is where I have the values hitting the income statement. So you can see here I have expenses, and I have it hitting the salaries line, the bonus line. Okay? And this will change in real time. So if I was playing with the bonus or merit, I could see those changes hitting my total income statement. I can see its effect on net income in real time. Okay, so let's go back to my input template here. Let's see. So Mandy White did a great job. I gave her a big raise. Robert Wilson, I wasn't so impressed with. So I'm going to go here to employee action, and I'm going to terminate him. Now you can see here I have a couple different actions. That's a fully customizable list, so you could have promotions in there. I have leave, whatever you want. That's fully customizable. I'm going to terminate him. And I'm going to say when I want this termination to take effect. Let's say it's going to be March. Okay, so you can see now here his bonus went to 0 because I have bonus hitting later, and he's not getting a bonus anymore because I terminated him. And most organizations don't pay bonuses to employees who have been terminated. So now I go back to the web. I go back here to employee summary. I can expand this, show the detail. And there you can see Robert Wilson, you see his values drop to 0 now after he's been terminated. Okay, so I'm seeing that. And again, we may not see it here. You can actually see those values just change when I came over here. You see the income statement values updated slightly. So I'm seeing that in real time, that impact. And also keep in mind, this is 2 different interfaces. So I'm going through the web to show the summarized results. I'm making these changes in my Excel template as different users. So here I'm actually logged in as admin. In the web, I'm logged in as user. Okay? Now, so that's how to update an existing employee's data. Also, I can go in here. I could change the bonus. I could add a bonus to people. I'm not really going to do it because it's not going to do anything. It's not going to show anything of huge value. But I could make a bonus adjustment saying, no, their default bonus to 10,000. I want them to get 20,000. Let's go back here to Server Explorer. And this menu that I'm showing here on the web, this is fully available in Excel as well. I'm just going through Server Explorer so you can sort of see where things are located, but you can put a fancy interface around it to sort of lock it down, maybe make it a little bit easier for the users. I would probably recommend having a menu, as we do for most of our clients. We have a menu that sort of guides them through it so they're going to the right templates. So in here, this is the same department. This is a clean slate. So I don't have any new positions I've requested. So I want to request a new position. So we'll call it test. It's going to be 1 FTE. They're going to start in March. I'm going to pay them $200,000. They're going to be a grade 10. I'm going to have them not be eligible for merit, so it doesn't really matter what the merit increase period is. Bonus eligible, I'm going to say no. So again, bonus period doesn't matter. And then if it's approved or not, I'm going to say in this case, yes. Okay? So now, I go back here to my employee summary. Close existing employees. See, total new hires now has appeared. This was not here before, and there's that new employee I just added. So and again, that value, you can see, and it's also calculating the taxes. You can see now those taxes max out in March, but that's where they're starting versus where the existing employees were maxing out in January. And then I'll also see that impact. If you caught it, it quickly changed when I updated this sheet. When I came back to it, you can see the numbers changed. So it shows that a new employee being added. Okay. So we updated some existing employees. We added a new hire. What if I want to move an employee from one department to another? So there's an employee transfer sheet. Okay. So here's Department ABC. So Department ABC has 2 people. I want to move Caden Brown from ABC to Department DEF, which is the department we were looking at earlier. So I'm going to say, where am I going to move them to? So these are all the departments available. I'm going to move them to DEF. I can transfer an employee, a position, so I can move just the position or the employee and its position. So in this case, I'm going to move them, their same position with them, same location, transfer type. So here it's employee position or employee and position. Let's say this takes place in May. And then I'm going to go to so now I basically put in all the metrics associated with that transfer, okay? So I'm going to go to process transfers out. This is basically going to take that transfer and process it, okay? So now it says pending. And what's happened there is I've taken this transfer, this person, and I put them into a holding area. Because I don't want to give a user the ability to move someone into someone else's department, okay? So now, for now, that person's still going to show up in Department ABC, okay? I said I put in a request to move them to DEF, but I'm not going to move them yet. So now let's go here to transfers in. Now, in this case, I have this already set up, but this would most likely in the real world be two different users, right? So the department head of ABC would send in the request. The department head of DEF would log in and see this request, okay? So like I said, for here, to make this easy, I'm doing it as the same user. And you could do it this way if you were someone who had access to both departments. That may or may not be realistic, depending on how your organization is structured. So here it shows them pending. Now I can decide what to do with it. I can accept it, decline it, or reverse it. I actually have the ability to undo accepted changes. So I could say, you know, I accepted this transfer, but really I didn't know what I was doing, so I can go back and unaccept it. We can disable that too if that's something you don't want to do, but we found some clients who were accepting things and then we're like, well, how do I undo it? And they wanted to retransfer it back, and it became overly complex, so we made it be a reverse feature. So I say accept. Okay? Now, if I go back to employee summary for DEF, I should see, hold on, let me see who that person was. That's Caden Brown. And there's Caden Brown for DEF. Okay? And you can see the values start to appear in that transfer effective period. Okay? And then you can also see those values hit the income statement as well for DEF. So that makes it really simple. So the big thing is here, and last thing I want to show you, if I go back to my cubes, so let's look at, so we talked about, so here's the fringe rates cube. So here I have those different rates, the caps associated with those. So I could change that from a version if you know, I think the footer rate is going to change or the cap is going to change. I can input that. It'll all flow through over in real time. Normally that's not something people are adjusting, but what we do see people adjust regularly is something like bonus lookup. Here we go. I see bonus rates change all the time. So here I have some employee grades. You can see here I gave them a default % bonus, but we have a lot of, and I gave a dollar value. So maybe I decided, you know what, I'm going to give everybody a 30% bonus this year. Okay? So if I go back here, you see the bonus went from $280,000 to $610,000. So I changed that for the whole company that quickly. And I could have done the same thing for merit. I could have moved the bonus period of when we pay out our bonus, pay it out a month early, a month later. I can do all that type of scenario modeling. So, the big advantage here is I can create scenarios where I can make those changes sort of on my own, see the impact, and then do something with it or not do something with it. You may decide, what, I don't like that, I'm going to throw it away. Or I like that, and I'm going to do other things with it. And, all these things can be tied together. So I'm showing it go through the P&L. I could have other things, other accounts linked to that. It could all be tied together in real time. And this is just the employee, this is just compensation planning by employee. You could also have another section that rolls together in the income statement that is strictly by, job function. So if you have manufacturing, you might have a whole separate cube that is just, I need X number of line workers or X number of technicians for a month, where it's not by individual employee. And those could all summarize together. So that's it at a high level. Let me take it back to the PowerPoint. So like I said, I showed you the sort of behind the scenes, what it looks like, the raw cubes. We could put a nice front end around it. We talked a little bit in the beginning about concert. So here's sort of the concert front end sitting on top of this. So you can see here are some of the key dates. Here's a calendar with the different things going on. Employee transfers, adding employees, adjusting bonuses. It's got postings on here sort of telling people. It has KPIs at a summary level, and then the different processes. And then here's just another screenshot of what an input might look like, where someone can input the data via concert. And what's nice about this is all on the web. It's available on your computer or on a mobile device, so I can even do my input on my iPad, where maybe I could look at the summary data on my phone. So I could be walking through the airport and pull up some some KPIs on his phone as he's going wherever. Okay? So, and we will be demoing this on top of what I just showed you at our Insight booth. Stephen, you want to talk to this?
So folks, for attending the webinar today, we're going to offer a complimentary one-day discovery and assessment for existing users or potential users of TM1. This is we really encourage you to take us up on this. It's extremely valuable. We hope that you'll see the value we could bring to your particular organization through spending some time with us, talking through your current processes, your current needs, and you see what it includes. So hit us up at that email address there, getinsights@ironsidegroup.com. We really appreciate you giving us your time today. And at this point, do we have questions that we want to take? Kristen?
Yep, we had a couple questions come through. The first question was, I'm not sure which point of the presentation, but I presume the values would be pulling from another system that is housing all these EE data. Jerry, do you know what, I think it was one of the last slides.
The what data?
The EE.
Probably employee data from.
Oh yeah, so I talked about that briefly at the flow chart. So essentially, most of the base data is typically coming from a payroll system. So that's where you get your starting point. So where the employees come from and their base salary, and then there's the sort of the base planning metrics as far as default merit and default bonus and all that stuff comes from wherever some user enters it. Usually it's decided at the executive level. They say here's what it's going to be, and then it combines with the user input. So that's sort of how it works. If that doesn't answer your question, let us know.
Another question: how complex are the underlying rules in this model?
The underlying rules in this model are fairly simple because we've frankly spent a lot of time making them as simple as can be. So, the goal of this is the rules don't change. So I don't want to show them because I don't want it to be intimidating, but really they shouldn't ever change. They're just one-line calculations. The goal is to have everything reference off of a cube so that the values can be updated, so I can change my rates, change my dates on things, and have it sort of update. And I shouldn't have to update the rules themselves.
Yeah, and I think from a design perspective, we feel that's really important going in, is to expose as many of the variables as possible. So I think you saw Jerry update some of the fringe rate tables and those sorts of things. So yeah, it's the way to make the rules simple and not changeable is to expose, a lot of those key variables that the finance team needs to edit.
So I would say, as part of this, through your normal maintenance functions, you should not be updating rules. So, going plan to plan, you should never have to update the rules. Now, obviously, if you add new metrics, new ways of doing things, you might. But just, if I'm doing the same thing, I'm not going to need to change rules on a in between plans.
All right, the next question that came in, is Chrome the preferred web browser?
No, I just prefer Chrome. You can Google what's supported. Pretty much all of the mainstream web browsers are supported. I just use Chrome because it's my preferred web browser. It's nothing to do with the actual application itself.
Okay, the code behind the process buttons, is that Turbo Integrator code?
So for the transfer processes, yes. So the transfer process where I was processing transfers in and out, those are kicking off Turbo Integrator jobs, yes.
Can such a similar model be created easily with Performance Modeler, or does it require hard coding?
So could you do this through Performance Modeler? I would say you probably could. We didn't develop this using Performance Modeler. I don't know that it would honestly be any easier, if that makes sense. Some of the rules and stuff span multiple cubes and stuff like that. They're not that hard because we've spent a lot of time getting them to be simple, but they may be a little hard to do in Performance Modeler, if that makes sense. So it's kind of up to you. It could be done that way. And you certainly could use Performance Modeler to update the system to interact with the system. So I wouldn't say you can't use it.
Okay. Example of transfer request, is that something that can be integrated with our HRMS?
So I don't quite understand what the integration would be. So are we talking about maybe pushing it back? I don't.
Yeah, I think it would be.
So you're saying
you think of it transactionally. It would be taking those transfer transactions and pushing them back into an HR.
Okay. Yeah, yes. So actually, yeah, I didn't show that. I didn't talk to that, but absolutely. So we actually see that a ton on the requested new hires. Right, so as part of my plan, I get, here's my approved official new hire list, approved positions, and they frequently upload that. So you could use transfers. People make changes to positions of what's open and closed, and yes, that could be uploaded back to whatever system you're tracking that with. Absolutely.
What tool was used to model this application?
What tool did I use to model it? Oh, I mean, I guess is the question, what development tool did we use? So we did, I'm assuming that's what you mean by this, we did all of it in Straight Architect. To be honest, some of this stuff started before Performance Modeler even existed. We've sort of been refining this, so it has been evolving over a number of years. So that's how this was done. But like I said, you could do most of this performance model. You probably could do all of it. That's just not how we chose to do it.
Yeah, and I think when you get to more summary views in particular, using what we have here as a solution as a baseline, that's a great usage of Performance Modeler to get at some of those summary views and even some what-if analytics on top of this solution.
I just put the IBM, the second IBM concert screen on. I think we were getting some lag, and some of you may not have seen that. I was seeing it fine, but I think there was a bit of lag on the webinar. So I'm just going to leave that up for now.
All right, we have a couple more questions coming in. We have a couple more minutes, so we'll just go through the rest of the questions, and then I'll share Jerry's contact information when I follow up with the PowerPoint deck, so we'll make sure you get all that. Another question that came in was how to integrate with payroll and HR systems.
So, and that's sort of, we sort of touched on that before. So typically, it can be a two-way street. So it's a feed from payroll/HR that says you have that base data. So that's my starting point is as of a given point in time, here's where I'm at. And then I could then send the updates, so be it where people end up within a plan, open positions, new positions, all those things. I could then push that back at the end of the cycle. So that could be via an ODBC connection where I actually push it back directly to the database, or we can export a flat file that they would then load back up. In the interest of time, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it's important to think of, what Jerry demonstrated today in the context of forecasting and budgeting and planning. So I think for the most part, pushing back into payroll or HRIS systems would only be applicable to the extent that you are maintaining, forecasted or budgeted information in those systems.
Yeah, so in the interest of time, I didn't really talk about this, but there is a process to create the forecast. So essentially, I say, and we have this, there's a TI process where when I create a forecast, I say what pay period I want to use as my base data. So essentially, that's where I talked about loading every pay cycle, and then you say I want to use pay period 16 as my base data, and then it creates the forecast using that base data. And then using that same process, I could also layer in new base data on top of an existing plan. So I talked about, how we could, your planning cycle could go on a number of months depending on how many reviews and stuff there are. You could then use that to layer on that new base data, but keep your adjustments and your actions. We talked about terminating, putting employees on leave, leaving that stuff in place.
All right, great.
I put my contact information up on the screen here in case anyone has other questions, but we can continue. I'm just putting it on the screen.
One of the questions that was asked was around our TM1 data modeling class. They asked if they could learn to create models like your presentation by taking this class in December. And Rob, you've confirmed correct, right?
Yeah, I think that the skills you would need to create pieces of what Jerry showed you would definitely acquire by attending that class, and then even if it's not a customized class, it is interactive, and participants do have the ability to create some meaningful smaller scope models in that class.
I'll also include registration and details around that class when I send everybody a follow-up email. That way, and I'll have Stephen's contact information as well. So any questions you have around the specifics of those classes will be answered. One last question. I know we're a minute or two behind, but they wanted to know if perspectives included with TM1 or an extra add-on application.
So Perspectives is the Excel add-in, so it is included in the base TM1 install. You don't have to use that. So, and I don't know, depends on what you're familiar with, but we could have done this through, I showed Perspectives and TM1 Web. I could have more or less done this through Architect. I could have done it through Cafe. Like I said, we have it in concert. It's all the same thing. You're accessing the same database, but Perspectives is part of a base TM1 install.
All right, that concludes the questions and also concludes the webinar. So thanks, Jerry and Rob and Steven for today's presentation. For those of you who are still on the line, we'll make sure to get you a copy of the PowerPoint deck and a replay that you can share with colleagues. We'll have that over to you in the next day or two. But again, if you have any questions around the webinar or any of our solutions, you can email getinsights@ironsidegroup.com, or Jerry Haig, his email is on the screen there. But we thank you all for your time today, and have a good rest of your week.